Hey, what's up guys, Jaeky here. I'm a Radiant Jett main and today I'm going to be going over some tips and tricks on how to use Jett's Blade Storm effectively. Alright, first let's go over the basics of the ultimate. When you pop your ultimate, you're going to have 5 throwing knives that get equipped, and when you left click, you're going to consume one of your knives, right? So let's say I'm down to 1 knife. If I get a kill with Jett's ultimate, it refreshes all of my knives, so I get all 5 knives back. Okay, so Jett knives do 50 damage to the body, that with full armor. That means you need 3 knives to the body to kill somebody. To the head, it's from any range is a kill, so 1-shot headshot to the head, 3 knives to the body with full armor. With your left click, you can click them one by one like this, or you can hold them down and it will rapid fire. With your right click, it's going to consume all of your knives, shoot them towards your crosshair at a centralized point. You can think of it as a shotgun, so it's like a shotgun shells, just like that. But you can also see the spread, right? So the further away I am from an enemy, the more spread there's going to be on my knives, meaning the less chance I'm going to have to kill somebody if I'm really far away from them. So you can see right there, like only one or two of my knives hit right there because I'm so far away. So with right click, you want to save it for when you're point blank on somebody. Like right here is a good range to right click, because at this range, you're going to maximize the chances that all of your knives will hit. Speaking of which, with right click, even if you kill somebody with your right click, you don't get your knives back. So regardless of whether you kill or not, if you right click with your knives, they're gone. Okay, so let's go over some tips. So with Jett knives, I always recommend you left click manually instead of holding down your left click. So when you, obviously, like I said earlier, when you hold down your left click, it's going to rapid fire your knives. I strongly recommend staying away from doing this and instead left click your knives. And the reasoning behind this is because when you left click your knives individually, you have a lot more control of your aim, and you also have a lot more control of your knife timing. Even if you wanted to go fast, you can always do that while left clicking. So if you left click super fast, it's pretty much the same thing as holding down left click. You can see like left clicking super fast, you can get your knives out just as fast, right? But when you left click them manually, you have a lot more control of your knives and your aim. I think the biggest reason why low elo Jett players whiff their knives is because they're holding down left click, and then their aim will just be off and they'll end up left clicking all of their knives just like off the enemy when they hold down left click. But if you manually left click, you can have time to readjust your aim. So if I realize that I'm slightly off, instead of like dumping all my knives into this one spot, I can readjust and micro adjust my aim if I'm manually left clicking my knives. Alright guys, my next tip with Jett knives is to always stay in constant movement when using your knives. So you kind of want to think of it as very similar to a Neon ultimate, where with Neon ultimate, obviously you want to stay in constant movement to make yourself a harder target to hit, and you just kind of track the enemies. And it's very similar with Jett knives. So with Jett knives, you're fully accurate even when you're fully moving. If you're jumping, you're also accurate. So no matter what, Jett knives will always be 100% accurate, and they will go exactly where your crosshair is. So if I'm full sprinting, my Jett knives will still go exactly where my crosshair is aiming, as you can see here, right? Even if I'm updrafted in the air, my knives will go exactly where I am aiming. So you want to use this to the maximum potential, and you want to always be in constant movement when you're fighting somebody with Jett knives, because that makes you a harder target to hit. So if I'm peeking somebody, I'm either updrafting in the air, right, to make myself a harder target to hit, or I'm sprinting across the screen, right? So the number one tip I can give for Jett knives is to take your time when you aim. You almost want to think of it as if you're using a sheriff, where like with the sheriff, obviously you're going to take your time to line up the shot before you shoot. You kind of want to apply that similar concept with Jett knives, except with Jett knives, you don't need to be standing completely still, right? But you still want to be taking your time to aim at the enemy's head. I always like to go for headshots with Jett knives, but you can also go for body shots, especially if you're updrafted in the air. It might be a little bit harder to go for those headshots. So you can go for 3 body shots if you're in the air and you're not fully confident in aiming for the head. But most of the time I will go for the head with Jett knives, and a big part of being accurate while going for the head is just taking your time to aim before you click. So yeah, think of it almost as if you're using a sheriff. Okay, so let's talk more about movement with Jett knives. So like I said earlier, you want to stay in constant movement when you're using your Jett knives, and a big part of that is using your updraft. So if I'm peeking somebody, I will be updrafting in the air to make myself a harder target to hit, right? But let's talk about dash. So your dash, a lot of people waste their dash by dash updrafting right? They'll dash updraft to fight with Jett knives. And in some situations, dash updrafting can be good, but 9 times out of 10, I would actually recommend saving your dash for repositioning midair. So instead of using your dash to engage with Jett knives, what you can do is actually pop your dash, updraft, and then fight with your updraft and use your dash to reposition, right? Because when you're peeking an angle, most of the time, it's not just going to be one person, right? There's going to be 2, maybe 3 people peeking you. So when you updraft and you get your first initial kill, you can use your dash to reposition and go for the second and third kill to make yourself a harder target to hit. Because if you use your dash and then you dash updraft and you get a kill, you're just kind of stuck now without any movement. So it's very easy for their teammates to trade you. But if you save your dash and you use your updraft, you get that first initial kill, you can then reposition with your dash and go for those extra multi-frags. I think dash updrafting is fine though if you're using it to entry, or if you're using it on a 1v1 battle, then dash updraft is perfectly fine to do, especially if you're trying to close the distance. If you're trying to close the distance for a right click, then you can dash updraft, right click. That's perfectly fine. Another big thing in terms of aim that you want to improve on when using Jett knives is tracking. So in Valorant, not a lot of people work on their tracking skills because Valorant's, you know, a very like flicky type of game where you flick to somebody and then it's first bullet accuracy type thing. So yeah, not a lot of people actually work on tracking when they do their aim training. But with Jett knives and Neon ultimate, those two ultimates are very heavy reliant on tracking. And so if you want to work on your tracking, what you can do is go into the range, spawn in these bots, and then a good tracking exercise that you can do is actually just put your crosshair on a bot's head and then move strafe left and right with your AD keys and try your hardest to keep your crosshair on the bot's head. Right, so this will work on your tracking ability, and you can just do this for a little bit to help you improve your tracking, because tracking skills is pretty important with Jett knives, especially when you're like gliding in the air, like you're updrafting and you're gliding. Obviously you're going to be moving the entire time, so you want to have good tracking skills so that you can stay on your enemy. Okay, another advice with moving and updrafting is you always want to be holding your glide. So when you updraft, you want to be gliding. This makes it easier for you to track your enemies. I see a lot of new like lower elo Jett players, they'll updraft and they won't hold their spacebar. So they'll be trying to like shoot the enemy while they're falling down super fast. And that's very hard to do, right? Like if you're updrafting and then you're trying to hit somebody while you're dropping super fast, it's a lot harder than if you updraft, hold your glide so you have a controlled descent. And if you have a slow controlled descent, it's a lot easier for you to hit your knives compared to if you don't glide, right? If you don't glide, it's a lot harder to hit all of your knives. All right, guys, and the top 3 takeaways that you should learn from this video is number 1, take your time when aiming with Jett knives. So take your time to line up the shot before you actually shoot. Think of it as if you're using a sheriff. Number 2, always stay in constant movement. Change your elevation to make yourself a harder target to hit, whether that's with updraft or dashing, or just simply moving side to side and strafing. You always want to make sure you're staying in constant movement when you're using Jett knives, because that just makes you a harder target to hit. And number 3 is to work on your tracking. So if you're doing any aim training inside of the range, or any aim trainers like Aim Lab or Kovacs, that you're actually doing tracking tasks that build on your tracking skills. All right, guys, last thing I want to talk about is when to actually use your Jett knives. So Jett knives can be great for supplementing your team's economy. What this means is if your team is really broke, right, and only some of them can buy, and you have the money to drop your teammate a weapon, you should drop your teammate a weapon and then pop your Jett knives. So Jett knives are great because they're basically just a weapon, right? So you can drop, if you have the money to drop your teammate, you can drop your teammate, pop Jett knives, and then you're pretty much a bank for your team. So you can get a lot more buy rounds out this way, and you can also make sure that your team has a strong economy by using your Jett knives. So assuming your team's economy is fine, you always want to pop your Jett knives as soon as you get them, because this increases the chances that you're going to be able to get them again in the same half. Okay, so when should you not use Jett knives? You should not use Jett knives if the enemy has KO ultimate available or anything to counter the Jett knives, which is basically just a KO ultimate. So if the enemy team has a KO and he has ultimate available, I would try not to pop Jett knives that round, and hopefully the KO uses his ultimate that round, and then you can use Jett knives the round after. And obviously the reason for this is super simple, just because KO ultimate hard counters Jett knives. So once he pops KO ultimate, you're just not going to have knives. And so if you see an enemy KO on the other team and he has ultimate available, I would save my Jett knives unless he's saving his KO ultimate for your knives. Then that's a different story. But if you see KO ultimate available, typically I would hold on to my Jett knives until he uses his ultimate. And that's pretty much it, guys. Those are my tips on how to use Jett's Bladestorm effectively. If this video helps you guys out, make sure you leave a comment, like, and subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next one. Peace.